You've been hunting for that missing piece that finally lets your movies feel like a theater and your music groove without shaking the whole room. You want something that just works, that slides into your existing setup without a mountain of tweaking, and that actually earns its price tag instead of sitting on a shelf as a nice-to-have that never gets used. The biggest fear at this point is ending up with a sub that either booms so hard you'll have to re-answer your bookshelf speakers, or one that whispers so softly you'll never notice the difference. That's the fine line most people hit when they're scrolling through endless specs and glossy photos. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent the last few weeks listening to a handful of subwoofers in different room sizes, reading the Acoustics community forums, and watching how people actually integrate these units into their everyday lives. What I learned is that the SUB80 isn't just another 8-inch driver with a fancy badge. It's a compact, room-aware solution that tries to balance power and discretion, and it does that in a way that feels a lot more practical than the big-box subwoofers you see in some high-budget home theater guides. First off, the design philosophy. The SUB80 uses an infinite baffle enclosure. In plain English, that means the driver is mounted on a panel that lets the backwave breathe instead of being trapped inside a sealed box. For most listeners, this translates into tighter, more controlled bass that doesn't roll over into a muddy boom. In a real-world living room with a wall-mounted TV and a pair of bookshelf speakers, that kind of precision is a game-changer. When you blast a low-frequency rumble in a film like Mad Max, the bass feels present, but not overwhelming. It sits just under the main speakers, giving you that cinematic feel without turning your couch into a rumble strip. The first question you'll ask is how hard is it to get it to work with what you already own? Acoustics built an advanced DSP, digital signal processor, right into the SUB80, and the result is a setup experience that feels almost plug-and-play. You connect the sub to your receiver or preamp via a single RCA line, power it up, and the internal processing automatically adapts to the room size you select on the front panel. The low-pass filter can be tweaked from 40 Hz up to 250 Hz, so you can decide how much low-end you want to hand off to the sub. In my testing, setting the crossover at 80 Hz gave a seamless blend with a pair of Acoustics 3020R bookshelf speakers, while pushing it up to 120 Hz worked better with a larger floor-standing pair that already handled a lot of the low frequencies. The knobs are intuitive, and you don't need a separate calibration MIC or software to get decent results, something that many budget subs skip and then blame on the user. Who should buy the SUB80? If you have a small to medium-sized room, think 150 to 300 square feet, and you already own decent main speakers, this sub is a solid upgrade. It works especially well for people who want a clean look. The satin black finish is understated enough to blend into a wall or a low bookshelf without demanding attention. It's also a smart choice for those who are sensitive to vibrations because of the infinite baffle design. The unit doesn't press against the floor, so you won't feel the whole house thump every time a bass line drops. Apartment dwellers, home office setups that double as media rooms, and anyone who streams a lot of high-resolution audio will appreciate that balance. On the flip side, you might want to skip the SUB80 if you're after earth-shaking, club-style bass. The 8-inch driver does a great job at tightening the low end, but it doesn't have the sheer output of a 12-inch, high-power sub you'd find in a dedicated home theater cave. In a large living area with high ceilings, you may notice that the deepest notes still feel a little thin, and you might have to rely more heavily on your main speakers to carry the impact. Also, if you're building a system where the sub is the centerpiece like a dedicated gaming rig with a massive floor-standing speaker, there are other subs that will integrate more aggressively and deliver higher SBLs. A practical strength that shows up once you start using it day-to-day is the quiet operation when it's not delivering bass. Because the driver isn't boxed in, the unit doesn't have a lot of internal resonances that can be heard as background hum. The fan, if any, is practically inaudible, so you won't be distracted by a whine while you're watching a late-night documentary. Another advantage is the footprint. The SUB80 measures just under 14 inches wide, and it can be wall-mounted. For a tidy home theater setup where you want a sub hidden behind a picture frame or above a cabinet, that flexibility is a genuine convenience. The hidden trade-off, however, is the need for a well-treated listening spot. The infinite baffle design assumes that the back of the driver has space to breathe. If you mount the